This is Unforgettable Learning, where we talk to L&D visionaries, experts, and mavericks about performance, creativity, and tech. Subscribe to stay in touch.
So, welcome along, Dave. Absolutely lovely to have you here on our Unforgettable Learning podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing excellent. Thanks for having me.
I'm really excited to talk to you about the year that you've had at the Learning Guild, because it looks like you had a really kind of tremendous 2023. And some of the highlights that I've kind of picked up on is you did Learning 2023 in Orlando, I think, with over 1,000 learning professionals, and you've had the biggest DevLearn ever, and you've enhanced your website with all these sort of personalized courses for learning professionals. And I think it was your 10th year, is that right, at the Guild?
It is. I've been with, this March marked 10 years that I've been with the Guild. It's been quite a journey.
I was going to say, so you must be feeling pretty proud of this 2023 year.
It's been a good year. I mean, I think we all are still a little bit of normalization coming out of the last few years of difficulty. But being in an organization that is heavily weighted by, for the last couple of years, it wasn't exactly the easiest time to be in the business of bringing mass amounts of people from all around the world to a single geographic location. There were some challenges attached to that. And 2023 was probably while we've been on the right path for a while, 2023 was the first year that it just kind of felt normal again. And I think our team, it reflected that. I think that there was just an enjoyment of being able to do what we do without having to worry as much about the past, and it just felt like we were back to normal. And I think our attendees celebrated that. I think our community just enjoyed the fact that things seem to be settling down. There's a new normal, of course, but the idea that, do I want to go to an event and be together with that many people? It seems to be less of a concern for people. I think it'll always be different, but I think it's as close to what normal was pre-pandemic than it's going to get, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting that you say it will always be different. What do you mean by that?
I maybe just in our lifetime, but I think it'll always be a little different. Even something as silly as somebody, you're in the store and somebody sneezes. It's not just an innocent sneeze anymore. You kind of have that moment of, wait a minute, what do you have? You kind of just have that little bit of a reaction that is just going to be with us, I think, for a while, of just, what does that mean? What's going on? Every single time you hear the word on the news, you just kind of have that moment of, okay, is the house of cards going to go down again? Yeah. and I think that's going to be with us for a while.
And did you see, when you were doing Learning 2023, did you see more people coming than you had done in 2022? Because I think 22 was the first year straight out of COVID, I guess. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, we definitely had more for 23 than we had in 2022. Same with DevLearn and Learning Solutions earlier in the year. Both of the fall events were the largest ones that we've run for those two events, which is great. And it was just lovely to have people back together. You see people, it's just different when you see people together, that they're enjoying each other and feeling comfortable in each other's presence. It's nice to have that back and feel confident that we're going to have that back.
Yeah, it's special. And I wanted to ask you a little bit about the Guild itself, and I think you have, am I right in saying, over 85,000 members? Is this
true? We have over 85,000 members in our database. They come from all around the globe. With any membership organization, you got different levels of engagement within those numbers. But people all around the world collaborate with us. And because of the way the Guild operates, not only do we have our face-to-face events that we host in the United States throughout the year, but we do online events throughout the year. And that's, I think, one of the reasons that we're able to appeal to such a large global audience, is that even if you're unable to come to our event on a given year, there's lots of stuff that we're doing throughout the year to support the community, and to online events, online conferences that we just do throughout the year that enables people to connect with each other, to invest in their own professional development, and really just help push this industry forward towards greater heights.
Yeah, super. And I was sort of interested in some of the learning courses that I saw that you have in there. I mean, as well as the research papers and the I'm always using the website as a source and a resource for kind of like, I wonder if the Guild are talking about this topic. And sure enough, I go in there and you've got things on immersive tech or AI or points of view on various different perspectives. And what are you hearing people saying that they're getting from being members of the Guild?
It's a great question. The two things that I think we hear most often, I'll go second and then number one, because number one is a clear number one. But the second thing that they get is just to kind of have their finger on the pulse of what's going on in the industry. It's one of the things that I think our team does very well. I mean, everything that we publish is for the community, by the community. There are things that our team will write and or speak on, myself included, but the vast majority, over 95% of the content that we have is coming from the community, whether they're writing a white paper or an article or speaking at one of our events online or in person. It's all coming from the community. And they get to see what other people are doing, see what the proven practices are, and how they can adapt it to their own stuff. So that's one of the core elements to it. But the number one that we always hear from people is being part of that community, being part of the industry community, being able to connect, whether it's online or in person, being able to connect with people, build their networks, see what other people are doing, and just that community of sharing. And it's one of the things that I love about being in this industry of learning and development, is that everyone who's in it just has a natural tendency to want to help others. And what we're able to do with the Guild is just kind of build environments where that energy can flourish, because whether it be in person or online and such. And that's what people connect with. They connect with the fact that through the Guild community, they are able to be a part of something bigger and connect with individuals throughout the world.
I've certainly experienced that when I've been to conferences like DevLearn, and I'm sure I've been to Learning Solutions as well. And, it's a big deal for us to kind of fork out to come to the States and go and do a US conference, but it's always worth it. And it's funny because I've got a little celebration to share with you, because next year in 2024, it will be 2024 when this podcast goes out, but I believe you said that it's 20 years of DevLearn.
It will be next year, yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. And for me, Sponge will be 20 years old too. So that's kind of a shared anniversary. So we'll have to have a celebratory glass of pop when I make it over to DevLearn. But I've always really loved DevLearn. I felt that sense of community. I've definitely felt that sense. I mean, I'm speaking about DevLearn because it's the one I've experienced the most and been to the most often. But I've spoken there at conferences. I've done those kinds of little talks, and I still kind of use it to inform my own practice. And I was thinking about a few of the people that I've seen, and I'm sure people like Jesse Schell you've had on his keynotes, and a scientist whose name I forget, but he just taught me the phrase exponential growth when we were talking about technologies. And these are things that have really kind of over the last 15 years sort of shaped my understanding of the world of learning. So I'm definitely grateful to you for the kind of programming and scheduling that you've been doing. And I was wondering what your favorite thing about kind of DevLearn is, and also what we might expect from the 2024 conference.
Sure. My favorite thing, I mean, I'm in a unique position within the Guild, but my favorite thing year in, year out, while there's all these things that stand out, my favorite thing year in, year out is just walking around and seeing old friends meeting each other, new friends connecting with one another, seeing the relationships flourish. I mean, every time I have the privilege of hosting our conferences, and I always close the conferences saying the same thing. What happens when we're together for this conference isn't nearly as important as what we do when we leave. And what enables us to be successful and apply what we've learned are the relationships that we form here that we take with us. And that's what I love seeing at the event, seeing those relationships take place, seeing the sharing that goes on in the session rooms and the hallways. That's where the growth comes from, and that's what fuels me in the work that I do. So I love that.
Do you hear those stories and sort of testimonials kind of playing background when the people come back the next year or email you or say, hey, thank you for this. I heard this talk. I went to this webinar, and just so you know, here's how I found value in it. Do you get those testimonials coming back?
We do, and we share them, and we share them with the team, so that they can see the value of the work that we're doing. And you mentioned when people come back to the show. To me, that's always the greatest compliment. I mean, it's when someone has been to our show and they come back, it means that our team did our job. Like we hosted something, we brought in the right content, it created value for people enough that they wanted to come back. And that's always the best compliment that we can get.
Super. And let's talk about trends. I'm recalling Realities 360, where I was I think it was 2017. I was a panelist as an early adopter of emerging and immersive technologies. It feels like you've always been an advocate for, looking at the trends in learning solutions and technologies, and you bring pioneers together and you look at and discuss proactively the merits and pitfalls of different things. And we seem to be an industry that's kind of characterized by these trends. I was curious, because you have the perspective of the last 10 years. What have you seen that you had high hopes for, and which things have kind of tanked?
Sure. So I still have as much as the hype curve is definitely behind it, I still have a lot of anticipation for AR. And I think that it needs to get normalized. I think the latest glasses from Ray-Ban and Meta are a step in the right direction. Because the challenge, I was one of the people that was walking around with Google Glass years ago. And everyone's like, oh my God, it's the greatest failure of all time. And it really wasn't.
I don't think it was either.
It wasn't. I mean, I say that for two reasons. One, it does make me feel better about dropping $1,500 to beta test the product. But it's also because when I used it, it worked. And it was, and from the standpoint of AR being something that is ever present, that is there when you need it, but is not distracting when you don't, it delivered on that. Where it failed, if you want to say failed, was in the normalcy of it. It worked very much for me as a user, but it was highly distracting to everybody around because it looked like I had a computer on my head. But now you see the Meta stuff, or that's just an example, all these glasses that look like regular glasses, but are just creating an AR experience. That's where it's going to be, because as much as you can do really cool AR experiences with your phone, you can't do anything with it because you have the phone in your hand. It's only when we get the AR experiences normalized where your hands are free and you're able to do something with it, especially in the context of learning and performance, that I think that's really going to drive some value. And a lot of these headsets are getting to the place, even the latest Quest headset is kind of blend, like the world of AR and VR kind of merging into one where you can do both of the experiences through one. So I still think there's a lot of potential there. It's just a longer tail in terms of how long it's going to take. And then, of course, there's all the discussions that everybody's having around AI, which is going to be a big part of our future. But I think that the world needs to catch up to the people playing in the sandbox right now. I mean, in the sense of like Europe is actually ahead of it, has come out recently with some guidelines and some rules around what you can and can't do and who owns what. US is behind in that right now. But there is right now, the adoption of AI is going on fast, is happening faster than the understanding of what it means to be using these tools and to start plugging them into an organization. So I think in the next 2024 is going to be a really interesting year as we start to catch up a little bit on that of what are the rules of engagement in this new, the cliche of the Wild West. What are the rules of engagement that exist in this new world of AI enabled work? And that's going to be really interesting to see.
Yeah, well, let's talk a bit more about AI, because we're seeing it in sort of content creation. We're seeing it in scenario simulation in terms of learning. It seems to me like it's sprinkled a little bit everywhere, and it's not necessarily like big bang stuff. It's like almost at the productivity level, everybody's using it a little bit. That just seems to be where I'm seeing things at the moment. What are you seeing, and what kind of use cases are you seeing, I guess in particular in relation to learning and workplace performance?
So the vast majority of what we're seeing is people playing in the space of content creation, for lack of a better term. Because that's the lowest hanging fruit, that I can go in and I can do things, and stuff that used to take me 5 minutes or 5 days would take me 5 minutes or 5 hours, because I can get my learning objectives fairly quickly through an AI analysis. And people are obviously enjoying that. But there's going to be a very quick ceiling of hitting that, of just this low hanging fruit. And how are we doing it more strategically? And the piece that when I'm talking to people about AI, that I am routinely reminding people, I almost feel like the part of the AI discussion that is most important is not on the table for a lot of people in the field, and that's the component of time, in the sense of right now in the short term, and when I say short term, I mean next few years, the greatest resource around AI is going to be time, in the sense of you mentioned productivity. I'm able to do all of this stuff that I used to do that used to take me hours, now takes me minutes, which can be great. And that's a wonderful use of the tool. But only if you're looking at it through the lens of, what am I going to do with that time? Because if you don't, I in the talks that I've given around AI, I usually ask the question of, let's just say hypothetically, a year from now, AI enables you to do what you do today in 80% of the time. What are you going to do with that 20%? Because if you don't have an answer to that question, that's risk. And we're going to let all of the questions that people have, and the cliches around, oh well, AI is going to take our jobs. I don't think anyone in L&D necessarily has to worry about a computer replacing them directly. But I do think, and this is maybe an unpopular opinion, but I do think that as we go forward with AI tools being normalized in our workplace, learning professionals who can use these tools will replace learning professionals who can't use these tools. As you start looking for jobs, it's going to be an expectation that you can use tools like this to be more efficient in your work. And if you're not able to adapt to that, you could be limiting your career path going forward.
Well, which tools are you thinking that we're going to need to be proficient in? If we're thinking about, you got to release a course in 2024 called AI Enablement for L&D, for example, what would be on your sort of curriculum?
So there's two answers to that. One, because I do think that too much of the L&D conversation around AI is literally in the narrow lens of, what are we doing with these tools? And I do think that's an important component of it. Like, how are we adapting? And there's going to be brainstorming, content creation, content organization, data analysis. I think will rapidly emerge in terms of some of the stuff that we do that's just in spreadsheets, to be able to get more data informed narratives around that. I think all of that's going to come in terms of, what are L&D professionals tactically doing with these tools? But I think the larger part of the discussion is, what is your organization doing with these tools? How is the work that the people you support changing as they start to use these tools? And what does that mean for your role? Because if the world of work is changing, the world of the people that we support as L&D professionals is changing, thus our work changes as well. And if you're not tracking that and looking through the lens of, not only how are these tools going to change the work that I do as an L&D professional, but how are these tools and the emergence of AI, both consumer level and enterprise level under the hood, how are they changing the nature of work in my organization? You're not going to be ready for the changes. And I think that's the bigger piece that L&D professionals need to be looking at, is these tools are great and they're going to make us more efficient, but how is it changing the nature of work in your organization? And what does that mean to your job?
Are you seeing that already in certain industries or sectors, that places are already being, I'm thinking of things like journalism, and, where the whole world of work there has been upended by, any kind of ChatGPT or any kind of AI tool that can write articles. But are you seeing any other kind of industries that seem to be changing more rapidly than others?
Higher education, tremendously. I've done a couple of talks at local universities for students, and it's funny. The last one I did, there was more faculty in the room than students, because they're very concerned around as these tools emerge. What does it mean for me as a teacher? What does it mean for me to be conducting my curriculum when someone can go into ChatGPT and do this? And again, it's kind of a flip model, and I'll use this as an example, though I think it applies. The metaphor here applies across any organization. To me, when I had a very lengthy debate with two of the teachers that were in the room, because they were like they were describing these tools as cheating. And I said, I understand the narrative there. I said, but honestly, what is cheating? Because when I was in school dating myself, I couldn't bring a calculator in. I wasn't allowed. That was cheating. But it's not now, because everybody's got a calculator in their pocket. And I do think we're going down a path. It's going to be really interesting to see what this looks like. But you use journalism as an example. That what is your writing as a definition is going to change. Right now people are it's like this black and white issue of, did you write it or did an AI tool write it? And the reality long term is going to be a much grayer space. I mean, if I use this if I have some thoughts and I put some bullet points in there that are my thoughts, and I have AI tool flush out those thoughts, did I write that or did the tool write that? Or if I'm brainstorming ideas around a particular topic and AI gave me some good ideas, and now I go and write that, who wrote that? Is it AI's idea or is it my idea? And the truth is, I think we're getting down the path of there'll be a redefinition of what it means to write your own thing using these tools in there. And it's going to be really interesting to see, like, that metaphor of just what it means to write or what it means to be a student applies to everything. In all of the work that's there, the skill set that we need is going to be different for any sort of a task once these AI tools become normalized within them.
I'm fascinated by your idea of the kind of grey area between your idea and an AI sort of writing things. Several years ago, I was one of the early beta testers for ChatGPT before it came out and before we really knew about it, because I was part of a immersive group that was using it for sort of story writing purposes. And one of the earliest experiments I was doing with it was you gave it a sort of a seed of a story narrative and then let it just tell you the rest of the story up to however many word count. And it was honestly one of the most phenomenal things I'd ever experienced. You could turn up and down the temperature as we can now. You could make it more farcical or more realistic. You had all these kinds of dials, and now that's sort of normalized. But at the time, it was a very fun experience to have it almost like as a collaborative creator. And I was definitely sparking ideas off what it was producing. I was stunned by the kind of sort of realism of the storytelling that it was coming up with, and the way it had put together character arcs that I just wouldn't have thought of, and pulled in sort of story beats and environments and situations that were just kind of frankly wild, some of them. And sometimes it took a bit of a nosedive and we were in sort of strange territory. But I thought that this is really, really interesting. And in a way, I had sort of thought of using it as a really greatly creative collaborator, a tool to support and enhance and prod and sort of encourage a richer creative sort of storytelling, as if maybe I'm the curator and creator. And I don't think that's bad. It's just different to what we've known before.
I agree. And what I'll add to that is, and I think this is a missing piece of the discussion as well, is what's not really being looked at within the story that you just gave is how you learn within that. I mean, one of the things that I did, an example of how I'm using ChatGPT just in playing with it. There's an article that I posted on LinkedIn recently about scale being a big part of the AI discussion. That why I think it's there. And I write fairly often. I'm trying to write more often than I used to. than I've been.
There's a tool for that.
Yeah, exactly. But when I was writing, I know based on my history of writing that I tend to be wordy. That in order to get all of my thoughts out, that I will probably write something that is longer than needs to be. So the first draft of that article that I wrote, I put into ChatGPT and I said, I wrote this article. This is my goal for the article. Make it 20% shorter. And it did it. But what I found really interesting, and this is the learning piece, is I went back and I was like, all right, so what did it cut out? Oh, that's really interesting that based on the goals that I put in there, it took these 2 paragraphs out because it looked at it and kind of said, based on the goals that you gave me, these were the lowest value sections of what's in there based on the criteria you gave me. And that I'm looking at that now. The next time I write, I'll be better because of the feedback it gave me based on that task. And it's a tool for learning in that context.
Exactly. Isn't that phenomenal that you're actually using it as a teacher in the flow of work in real time? And it's giving you so much benefit for the next time, because we learn fast, actually. In that scenario, you've already taken the learning from that. And the next time you write an article, we'll do something different. It's fascinating. I don't know whether you want to touch a little bit on image generation or AI video, other kinds of content creation. Those tools seem to be just going sort of exponentially quickly in an area that I think I'm frequently using Midjourney and things for pitches, and that's been the case for a long time. The video content that I'm looking at making it seems to be getting better and better daily, like Midjourney was 18 months ago. Have you got any thoughts on those tools, the visual and audio and video tools?
I think that very soon, a year or two, what we're seeing now, where that uncanny valley stuff that exists in the visuals right now is going to be fixed. It's moving so fast that your ability to look at a video or an image and say that was probably done by AI is going to be much harder. Which on one end is extremely exciting because our ability to use it as learning professionals and such is really, really powerful within that. I mean, it's democratizing the ability to create content in different ways. When I look at the visuals and the video that's there, admittedly, that's where I get a little triggered from my fears, not in terms of the possibilities, not in terms of the potential for these tools. I think that all exists. But anytime you have a new technology that emerges, to be overly dramatic about it, you always kind of look at it through the lens of, well, how's someone going to use this for evil? I know that that's a dramatic statement, but there's always going to be people who are using it in an unethical way. And the ability to create videos that look like they're real, but they're not, is kind of scary. I mean, I joking aside, I have members of my family years ago that shared on social networks a picture of Hillary Clinton and Saddam Hussein at a dinner party together. And they thought it was real. And I was just like, it was the most ridiculous thing in the world, but there were members of the family who shared it. And that's not a political thing. It's just like, it's a ludicrous scenario that someone looked at and was like, look at this. These people were together. And that it looked ridiculously fake. The ability for someone to be manipulated by video or to be targeted by video that is not real is kind of scary. And I really hope that the world can get ahead of that.
I think I've heard this phrase, I'm not sure if you've heard it, truthiness, and that we're going to kind of evolve towards a place where we kind of, we know things aren't real, or we may suspect that things may not be real. But if it's truthiness enough for us, we can take meaning from it, which obviously in scenarios like you've just painted, it's not one to take a truth from. But when I think about things like little Michaela and all the kind of virtual influencers and how they're being used in kind of advertising and to all intents and purposes, because people want to believe, they kind of can, and that's okay if you know that it's what it is, you know what the entity is that you're dealing with. When you are tricked, then we have to attempt to be a bit more vigilant, perhaps, with the visual and media content that we're seeing. And that's going to be part of our world now. That's just part of the world now.
We're going to have to figure that out.
Cat's out of the bag.
There will be people who are going to use these tools in a manipulative way. And that's just the reality of it. And I hope that the world can stay ahead of that to protect people. But that said, these tools are here, they're not going anywhere. And I think that there's a lot of great things that can be done with them, including in our space. I think that there's going to be a lot of our ability to support people in an appropriate way and continue to support their growth through these tools is exciting for me.
Yeah, I agree. I would enjoy getting your perspective on speed in L&D and the sense that, you know, again, you've had 10 years perspective on this industry at least, but at the Guild at least. And I'm curious where you're seeing things progressing and where things are just not moving fast enough in our world.
Well, it's interesting because, I mean, where are things progressing? I think that our ability to adopt new technologies, we're good at that, but we're good at adopting new technologies to do what we've already been doing. We're not so good at adopting new technologies to transform how we're doing. I mean, there are debates. I appreciate the fact that you said I've been in this industry for 10 years. It's considerably longer than that.
At the Guild.
But as long as I've been in this field, which is a number of decades, there are certain debates that we've been having since I started. And when we talk about trying to get a seat at the table within our field, it's because we operate like we're a learning business, not that we are a function of the larger business. And that's been a challenge, that we've been pushing up against as long as I've been in this field. I think we've made progress, no question, but I think that it's been slow, because we just have not been as strategic as we could be about it.
Why do you think that is? Because I absolutely agree with you. And one of the things that I've kind of noticed is that I feel like some people love L&D and they get there because they love people and they care. Other people kind of fall into L&D. I myself am in that category. Yep. And I'm really interested in why it is that we haven't been able to kind of elevate as quickly as we might like the role of L&D in organizations. I mean, you touched on it, you said that we're not thinking like that we're a function of the larger business. I'm sure people listening to this would think, yes, I am, and they'd rally against us saying that. But what is it that's kind of not shifting?
So I think there's two factors. There's an internal and an external factor. The internal factor is our own inertia of we want to be connected to the business, but are we speaking their language? Are we talking to the business in the context of performance? Can we get them to view us as performance consultants rather than training departments?
Content people, yeah.
Yes, and then that dovetails to the external component. I think the biggest barrier that a lot of organizations face is school. Because we're all conditioned from very young age for 12 plus years of what quote unquote learning looks like. And that is kind of an expectation that the stakeholders in our organizations have, that someone needs to learn something. I need to send them to the corporate equivalent of school to get trained on how to do these things. And that's been a battle we've been having forever. I mean, one of the biggest anchors that I think L&D has is the global perception of what learning looks like, and that it looks like school, and that we're there to educate people, which is knowledge-based, not performance-based and skill-based. And until you can shift that mindset within your organization for your stakeholders, that's going to be an ongoing battle.
I feel like, and it's probably something that the Guild does very well, in fact, is that we need more good examples.
Yes.
And, constantly inspiring people with some really good examples, some innovations, some different things. I wondered if you can think of maybe from DevLearn Demo Fest or anywhere else, a really lovely, innovative example you think that's kind of doing a great job of shifting that move forward.
Trying to think of Demo Fest, because Demo Fest is one of my favorite things when people put it together. A specific example is not coming to my mind of like this particular use case, but where kind of collective examples that always resonate with me is when people are solving the problem and not focusing on educating or training somebody, someone who finds the right resource to get somebody in. I mean, there's lots of workflow learning technologies that are available to us right now to find ways to give people the support in the workplace, in the middle of the workflow. But I think it's more the people who are demonstrating that they're approaching their work with that mindset. I mean, me 25 years ago, before I even heard about workflow learning or performance support or wherever we were calling the thing back then, I always looked at the question of when we had something drop on our lap is, what's the least disruptive way that we can solve this problem? Because I knew all of the managers that I was dealing with, that I was in banking at the time, hated to send people to training because they weren't working. So I was looking through the lens of what's the least disruptive way? Do we have to bring them in, or can we find a way can we create something that's in there? And I think that that's a mindset that we need more of in L&D. Because now, I mean, like I mentioned, workflow learning, micro-learning, performance support, they're all kind of overlapping in this Venn diagram. We've been having this conversation for decades. What's different about it now, and what excites me now, is that technology's caught up. We have these tools that are enabling us to support people within the workflow, within the ability for them to just get support in the application that they're already using. It feels like they're just doing their job, but there's this plugin that's attached to it that is giving them support, recognizing when they're struggling and giving them appropriate support tools. That's where learning and performance needs to be going. Not necessarily, I want to be clear. I don't hate training. I think training is great, but I do hate training as the default solution. If someone has a problem and your default is we need to create a training course for it, you're not doing the job that needs to be done in 2024. You need to be looking at it and thinking, what's the problem? What's the least disruptive way that I can solve this problem? And what technologies do I have available to me to facilitate that?
Yeah, fantastic. And do you think that does that give you a perspective on off-the-shelf content then?
I think off-the-shelf content is great. I don't think I have no issue with training or off-the-shelf content. It's more the usage of it. How are we using it? Because and I want to be also clear. I don't judge, because I mean, I've worked in organizations where I had $1 million budgets. I worked in an organization where my budget was, what's your salary today, David? And that's where you have to work with what you have. And if all you have is the ability to get some off-the-shelf content, and maybe add some context to yourself to solve the problem, then that's you doing the best you have with the resources you have. But I think understanding the resources that you have available, being curious to broaden your lens between what I think I have available and what I might have available, and then building the solution that is best appropriate, given the resources you have, given the problem that you're trying to solve. That's the lens that we need to be looking at the work that we do.
And so, casting our minds forward then, what do you think should be the top, perhaps 3 themes L&D should be tuning into in 2024?
Themes for 2024. I think that the normalization of AI is obviously everybody's top one. It's there, it's going to disrupt us. And I think even if you're not curious about playing with these tools to see what they are, you should be curious to know how they're changing the work that people do, because that will impact your work. So that's the easy number one. I think number 2, things that I am personally curious about. I'm very curious to see how the integration the integration of a lot of these tools that are out there, it's a kind of a secondary to AI, but AI, most people are looking at AI, how do I use an AI tool? What really excites me more, the number two element of that is how are existing tool sets that are and platforms that are out there being augmented by AI? That a lot of people won't even realize that the same thing that you're doing in ChatGPT, this tool that you're using today is doing that. It's just transparent and visible to you because it's embedded into the workflow of what you're doing. And that's going to be a big part of 24. And I'm excited to see how that pushes things forward. That's going to be a big element of it. And I think also the third thing that I would throw out there is just the continued understanding of what immersive means. I'm glad that the industry has, and when I say the industry, I mean the tech industry in general, has kind of seems like it's stepping away a little bit from the metaverse, because I think that was a marketing thing more than a practicality thing. But I'm still bullish on AR, VR, and the merger of the two, because I do think, especially in the context of L&D, that is it going to be the catch-all that does everything? No, that we should stop looking at what we do through that lens. But do I think that these tools are going to enable us to solve problems that we wouldn't be able to solve otherwise and open up new possibilities for us? Absolutely. I think a door is going to be blown wide open once the normalization of these tools hits.
I know that you have many conferences going on next year, but in particular, I'm excited about DevLearn. So can you just tell me, when is it? Where is it? You've changed venues. What can we look forward to?
Yeah, so I'll quickly run through. We've got three major face-to-face events in the year. The first one is in the spring. It's in April in Orlando. It's our Learning in HR Tech Solutions event. That's a rebrand of our Learning Solutions event, which is expanding the focus to include talent development. So developing more talent development HR resources there and exploring the tech stack that exists within HR and learning together. So looking forward to that rebrand. DevLearn is our flagship event that's shaping what's next for learning and development technologies. That'll be in November, first week in November at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas. And then we'll have the Learning 2024 show in December of next year. Again, same location we had this year in Orlando. And that will be that show focuses more on the leadership skills that learning professionals need in today's work environments.
Excellent. Well, I hope to see you at least one of these.
Absolutely.
And it's been an absolute pleasure having you on, and really, really great to talk to you. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing with us.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me. I enjoyed the talk.
Absolute pleasure. Take care, David. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode. Subscribe to stay up to date with leading lights from L&D and leave us a review to let us know what you think.